The auditorium hummed with restless energy. Middle school students whispered, fidgeted, and rolled their eyes as the final guest speaker of Career Day walked on stage. Karoline Leavitt stood tall and poised, wearing a magenta blazer with a cross pendant resting near her heart. She hadn't come expecting applause. She came to inspire, yet what she faced was a dare. A student in the third row, arms crossed and smirking, raised his hand and asked, "Can you sing or play anything? Or are you just here to talk politics?" Laughter broke out. The principal stepped forward, ready to intervene, but Karoline gently raised her hand, calm and collected. "I accept your challenge," she said. The room fell silent. "I'll see you at the talent show." What began as a sarcastic prank quickly became the talk of the school. Students whispered. Parents made plans to attend. Teachers murmured in break rooms. And Karoline? She made a call, dug out an old banjo, and practiced by moonlight. When she finally took the stage, no one laughed. By the end of her 90 seconds, neither did the nation. Before we continue this inspiring story, tell us where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the Black Stories. Tomorrow we have another inspiring tale you won't want to miss. Karoline Leavitt, mocked by a student. The morning had started happily. Karoline Leavitt had flown into Baton Rouge for a quiet visit with her sister and 12-year-old niece, Grace. Learning that Grace's school was holding Career Day, Karoline asked if she could surprise her niece. Grace was always shy, often keeping her head down at school, and Karoline hoped seeing her aunt on stage might give her confidence. The principal, Mrs. Holloway, was thrilled. "A U.S. congressional candidate? Our kids will love it," she said, smiling. But as Karoline entered the auditorium, something felt off. The lights were too bright, the murmurs too loud, and the laughter overly eager. A student on the edge of the stage whispered to a friend. Phones were already pointed at her. She greeted the crowd warmly, speaking of hard work, courage, and how leadership is about steadiness, not volume. Some students listened, others whispered and giggled. Grace sat near the back, head down, face red. Then it happened. A boy in a soccer jersey, Travis Bellamy, stood and raised his hand, wearing the look of someone clever. "Do you have any real talent, or are you just here to lecture?" he asked loudly. The crowd erupted. Teachers flinched. Grace turned pale. Principal Holloway stepped forward, but Karoline smiled and raised her hand. "I accept your challenge," she said, locking eyes with Travis. "I'll see you at the talent show." The room fell silent, then buzzed with laughter, gasps, and recording phones. Travis sat down, still smirking, but now uncertain. Grace wished she could disappear. Backstage, Karoline stayed composed, though the smile faded the moment she stepped into the hallway. She leaned against the wall, exhaling. She wasn't angry, just disappointed. Not in Travis, not in the room full of teenagers eager for content. She was disappointed at how easily cruelty masquerades as humor, something she witnessed daily in politics, but never aimed so directly at someone she loved. Later that night, on the porch swing with Grace, the girl finally spoke. "You don't have to do it, Aunt Karoline. They just want to embarrass you." Karoline smiled. "What if I told you I used to play banjo when I was your age?" Grace blinked. "You played banjo?" Karoline nodded. "A woman named Miss Edna taught me. She said never let someone else decide what you can or can't do." Grace paused. "So you're really going to play?" Karoline looked at the stars. "Not for Travis. Not for them. For you." Karoline Leavitt prepares in secret. The next morning, Grace found Karoline at the kitchen table, coffee in hand, a notebook full of song titles in front of her. "You're really doing it?" Grace asked, biting her lip. Karoline nodded. "I am." Grace hesitated. "You don't have to prove anything." Travis was just trying to get a laugh. Karoline smiled softly. "I'm not doing it for him." Sometimes when people expect you to back down, the strongest thing you can do is stand up, or in this case, tune up. That afternoon, Karoline climbed to the attic, opened a dusty cedar banjo case, and smiled. Her childhood banjo was still there, strap worn, initials M etched on the neck. Edna May, her first teacher. She strummed a chord, out of tune but promising. Later, Grace introduced Karoline to Maya, a quiet seventh grader with musical talent. Maya's father had converted their garage into a mini studio. Karoline showed her banjo. "Nobody ever brings a banjo," Maya whispered, excited. "This will be amazing." Together, they practiced. Maya refined the sound, adding rhythm and layering soft bass. Grace coached Karoline on timing, posture, and stage presence. A politician, a middle schooler, and a shy sound engineer, an odd trio, but it worked. Word spread. A clip of Travis's original challenge leaked online. By day 2, it had over 70,000 views on TikTok. Local reporters called the school. Karoline's campaign team worried. "Karoline, you're walking into a trap," an advisor warned. "What if they boo? What if someone edits it to make you look foolish?" She listened calmly. "What if a young girl in the audience feels brave for the first time?" Her advisor sighed. "Okay, just rehearse it well." "I already am," Karoline said, smiling. That night, Maya brought the final mix. Traditional or your original ending? Karoline chose both. They worked until midnight. Grace fell asleep. Karoline practiced. Maya whispered, "They're not ready for this." Karoline exhaled. "Good." Karoline Leavitt stuns the audience. The talent show buzz grew so large it moved to the Baton Rouge Community Art Center. Folding chairs filled the auditorium. Parents, reporters, and even a small news crew packed the space. Backstage, Grace paced nervously. Performers went one by one, dancers, singers, even a magician. Karoline had not yet arrived. Just before the final act, the side door opened. Karoline stepped in, banjo case in hand. "Got stuck on a last-minute call," she said, catching her breath. She hugged Grace, nodded at Maya, and headed to the dressing room. She opened her banjo case, touching a faded photo of Miss Edna. When the announcer called her name, anticipation rippled through the crowd. Parents had heard the buzz. Students had shared the dare online. Karoline stepped into the spotlight. White blouse rolled at the sleeves, cross necklace catching the light. 5 seconds of silence, then strum. The first chord of Jambalaya rang clear. Her voice followed, warm and full. She sang not for applause, but to tell a story. By the chorus, murmurs became nods. Then the twist. "Miss Edna always told me, if you sing someone else's song, keep your own too." This next one, I wrote at 16, in my bedroom, with a banjo out of tune. Her second song, soft and haunting, spoke of courage, silence, and standing tall. Teachers wiped away tears. Parents held hands. Travis, in the third row, said nothing. The final note lingered. Silence, then applause, one clap, then another, then a standing ovation. Students who had laughed days ago now cheered. Phones recorded to remember, not mock. Karoline smiled, nodded to Maya, and bowed. The prank had become poetry. The moment was unforgettable. Karoline Leavitt goes viral for courage. The morning after, shaky footage of Karoline went online. TikTok users titled it, "This is what courage sounds like." Views skyrocketed. 100,000 in an hour, 1 million by noon. Hashtags like Banjo Bold, Karoline Leavitt Leave, and Senator Strums trended. It wasn't just the music. It was context. Comments questioned, "Wasn't this a prank?" She turned ridicule into a performance of courage. News outlets covered it. Interviews came in from CBS, NPR, and more. Karoline declined the spotlight, issuing a statement. The stage belonged to every kid ever laughed at for being different, quiet, or honest. Grace's school shifted overnight. Teasing classmates now sought friendship. Teachers used Karoline's performance as lessons in grace. Even Travis appeared humbled. TikTok stitched clips of his mocking face freezing just before Karoline played 6 million views later. Maya received recognition from a Nashville producer. Letters of praise and encouragement poured in. Parents thanked Karoline for showing children that bravery, not loudness, defines talent. Karoline Leavitt launches Music Foundation. The next morning, Karoline announced the Miss Edna Music Fund, inspired by her childhood teacher. Annual scholarships would go to students passionate about music, regardless of their means. Maya, stunned, received the first certificate. Grace, once fearful, now stood proud beside her aunt. Karoline and Grace toured schools, providing instruments and mentoring students. National media began calling her the senator who strummed, the woman who turned mockery into melody. Karoline's message was clear: courage, grace, and mentorship can change lives. Not applause, not views, real impact. Karoline Leavitt's message to America. What happened in Baton Rouge wasn't just a talent show. It was about courage that doesn't seek attention, about showing up when it's easier to walk away. Karoline didn't retaliate. She performed with heart, love, and respect. Her story reminds us, sometimes the strongest voice isn't the loudest. Sometimes bravery looks like melody. Travis's prank failed because Karoline met mockery with grace. If you believe in courage, humility, and the power of art, join us. Subscribe, like, and comment on the Black Stories, because sometimes the fighter's America needs carry a tune.